The woman holding a baby on the porch looked at my father like he was trespassing. A man named Tom stepped out, still holding a watering can, and said the words I wish I could have seen delivered in person. "Sorry, but this is our home now." And me, I was 800 miles away, sipping coffee in my new apartment, smiling. My name is Ethan Blake. I'm 30 years old, and this is the story of how I walked away from a toxic family that tried to steal the only place I ever called home. 3 weeks ago, they thought they'd won. They assumed I'd play the good son again, that I'd cave, like always. But not this time. This time, I wasn't the obedient child. I was the one with a plan. The story didn't start with a fight. It started with a family dinner. My mom had called earlier that day. Her voice was unusually sweet, which, in my house, was always a red flag. "Ethan, I made your favorite barbecue," she said. "Tonight we're all getting together to celebrate your success." I should have known. In my family, a good meal always came with a bad request. Dinner was held at the house in the Seattle suburbs, the one I used to live in, the one I rebuilt, brick by brick, the kitchen I installed, the walls I painted myself. It wasn't just a house, it was the dream I built after years of hard work and scraping every penny I had. But the moment the barbecue hit the table, the tone shifted from loving family gathering to an ambush disguised as a discussion. My mother, eyes full of fake emotion, placed her hand gently over mine and said, "Kyle and Rachel need a stable place to raise their baby, and we all talked it over. They'll be moving into your house next month." There was no question mark in that sentence, just a period, the end of my patience. Have you ever felt like a backup plan in your own life? If you have, then you'll understand why I did what no one in my family ever saw coming. I can't remember if the barbecue that night tasted as good as it usually did. Maybe it was the familiar spicy tang of Mom's signature BBQ sauce, or maybe I was too busy scanning the table, silently counting who already knew. My dad, Frank, avoided my eyes. He stared at his plate like the answer might be hiding beneath a pile of cold green beans. Kyle, my older brother, sat with one leg crossed, wearing the smug look of a man about to be handed a prize. And next to him was Rachel, gently cradling her belly with a tenderness I'd never seen her show anyone in our family. They didn't need my approval. The decision had already been made. "We all want what's best for the baby," Mom continued, like she was reading from a script she'd been rehearsing for days. "You've got a beautiful, stable house, close to parks, close to schools. Meanwhile, Kyle and Rachel are stuck renting some cramped little apartment. They can't raise a child in that environment." Kyle nodded along, completely unbothered. "We're planning to turn your office into a nursery. Rachel already picked out paint colors. Coastal calm. Sounds peaceful, right?" Rachel chuckled and pulled out her phone, showing me a mood board filled with soft pastel blues. I swallowed, not because I was at a loss for words, but because I knew if I opened my mouth then, I'd say something that might burn this whole place to the ground. I looked around that familiar room, the one where I'd spent countless nights writing project proposals, mapping out my career, video calling Alyssa when we were still together, and now it was being repurposed as ideal nursery space. I stayed quiet, not because I agreed, but because I was counting, like a soldier waiting for the signal to strike. After dinner, I drove back to my temporary apartment in Portland. A quiet little place I'd been staying in for a few months while handling a project for the parent company. No one there knew me, and that was exactly the point. As soon as I got in, I opened my laptop. The email from HR was still sitting in my inbox about a transfer offer to Denver. a brand new branch, and they needed a senior tech lead. All I had to do was reply, "Confirm." I clicked reply and typed 3 words, "I'm in." Ethan. 3 days later, I called my mother. "I've thought it through," I said, my voice steady, calm enough that she didn't suspect a thing. "You're right. Kyle and Rachel need a place to start their family. I'll move out within 3 weeks, but I'd like to repaint the house a bit, just so it feels fresh for them when they move in." "Oh, Ethan, you're an angel," she sighed, her voice trembling with relief. I smiled, a smile she couldn't see, didn't need to see. I had already started redesigning my life from the ground up, and they had no idea. I wasn't tearing down that house with a hammer. I was doing it with a decision. When I was a kid, everyone in the family called me the good one. By the time I was 7, I had already learned to give in, clear the table after dinner, apologize even when I wasn't wrong. All of it, just to keep the peace, in a house where everything always revolved around Kyle. Kyle wasn't bad, at least not by my family's standards. He was just always forgiven, always rescued, always the center of the universe, no matter how many times he shattered someone's trust. I remember something clearly from when I was 17. I'd been accepted into a summer program at Harvard, a pre-college course for top students across the country, only 40 spots nationwide, and I was one of them. I was so excited I didn't sleep for 3 nights. I thought, this time they'll be proud of me, finally. But a week before I was supposed to leave, Mom came to my room with that gentle tone she used whenever she was about to ask for something. "You know, Kyle wants to start a phone repair business. Your dad and I can't quite help, but you've saved up $3,000 from that scholarship fund, haven't you?" I looked at her, then looked at the suitcase I'd already packed. The enrollment papers, my course books, even a few novels I'd planned to read in the dorms. I didn't argue. I just logged into my bank account, transferred the money, and sent an email withdrawing from the Harvard summer program, citing a family emergency. Kyle's phone repair shop shut down in 6 weeks. The thing with Alyssa left a deeper scar. She was my college girlfriend, smart, sharp, hilarious, with eyes that could see straight through any lie. We had planned a trip to Europe after graduation, something we'd saved for together for nearly a year. I worked part-time at the library. She tutored middle schoolers in Spanish. We budgeted every dollar. A week before our flight, Mom called again. This time, Kyle was behind on his credit cards, and if it didn't get paid immediately, his credit score would tank. And of course, you're the most responsible one in the family, Ethan. I know I can count on you. I canceled the ticket, sent Alyssa a refund as a half-hearted apology, and for the first time, I saw her eyes go from sad to cold. "I love you, Ethan," she said, "but I can't be with a man who lets the whole world walk over him and calls it family." She left, quietly, no tears, and I stayed, with a family that never once acknowledged the things I gave up, just to keep us from falling apart. Now when my mom asks me to sacrifice a little more for a baby who isn't even born yet, I realize something. I've spent my whole life being the family's crash pad, the sandbag they toss on the fire every time Kyle messes up, and they've come to expect it, like it's some unspoken rule, but not anymore. This time I didn't tell them the plan, because this time I'm not saving anyone. 1 week after that infamous dinner, my mom sent me a cheerful text. Rachel found the perfect curtains for the living room. Coastal calm, just the shade she loves. Want to see? I didn't respond. I was in the middle of a video meeting with the Denver branch team, but the messages kept pouring in like a monsoon. Kyle's going over some landscape designs. Dad thinks we should ditch the wooden deck and go with stone pavers like the neighbors. Safer for the kids to play. Oh, and Rachel said the office you use has amazing natural light. She's thinking it'll make a lovely nursery. Don't worry, honey. Everyone just wants Kyle and Rachel to have a good start. What you're doing is a beautiful thing. Within 72 hours, they had redecorated my entire life on their Pinterest boards, without once asking if I still lived in it. I read each message with an eerie calm, like watching invaders move into a sacred temple, unaware the floor beneath them was already hollowed out. My father, who'd always played the role of neutral party, finally stepped in. He called using the firm tone of a retired senior manager. "Ethan, the family has talked this through. You should feel proud you're helping. Kyle's about to be a father. He needs a stable place to raise a child. You're single, no obligations. This just makes sense. Makes sense." That phrase slammed into my temple like a hammer. I asked, voice steady but cold, "So, because I don't have a wife and kids, I don't need a home anymore?" My father answered without hesitation, "Not as much as he does. Not as much." To them, I wasn't a person. I was a resource, a utility, a walking, talking asset that earned money and said yes at the right moments. And that's when I realized I was never truly part of this family. I was just the cushion they landed on, over and over, every time they fell. After the call, I silenced all contact from my parents and from Kyle. No more notifications, no more updates. I pulled up my calendar and marked the following Monday, the official start of the home renovation plan. 3 weeks of silence, no visitors, no interruptions. I labeled the event Dismantling the Memories. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I was about to sell off everything they thought they still controlled. Sunday morning, I called my mom. Her voice came through light as air, like everything was falling neatly into place, just the way she'd planned. I pictured her standing in the kitchen, one hand on her coffee mug, the other flipping through a notepad titled Things to Buy for Kyle's New Home. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice warm, but hollow, "I think everyone's right. Kyle deserves a fresh start, and if that house helps him, then I'll move out in 3 weeks." Silence. Then an exhale so full of relief she didn't even try to hide it. "Oh, Ethan, I knew you'd understand. You've always been the kindest soul in this family. You're truly a gift from God. The glue that holds us all together." I smiled, a smile that never made it to my eyes. "I'd like to hire a professional cleaning service to get the whole house spotless," I added. "And I'm thinking of repainting the interior. Something neutral, easy to redecorate. I just want Rachel to feel as comfortable as possible." "Ethan, that's so thoughtful, but is it really necessary?" she asked, though I knew she was practically floating at the thought of finally getting the perfect home for her future grandchild. "It is, Mom," I said calmly. "Kyle deserves a proper beginning." She choked up a little. "I knew you wouldn't let me down." "No, Mom, but this time I will surprise you." That very evening, I sent an email to Emma Chun, a real estate agent a colleague had recommended. "I need to sell a house. Fast. Quietly. No public listings. Buyer must be discreet and ready to transfer funds quickly. I'm willing to cut the price for privacy." Her reply was short. "I specialize in complicated situations. Call me at 9 a.m. tomorrow." And just like that, I began living 2 lives. One version of Ethan, the ideal son, texting Kyle to check in, suggesting hardwood options for the nursery, even pretending to schedule the cleaning crew. And the other Ethan, cold, quiet, methodically selling the very house they thought they were about to inherit, pretending to prepare the handover while dismantling the dream they'd built on my silence. No one suspected a thing, because I had never pushed back before. They thought I was used to nodding, used to swallowing it, used to giving up. But this time, I wasn't swallowing anything. I wasn't just getting ready to move out. I was erasing their footprint from my life, brick by brick. I knew I had exactly 3 weeks. 3 weeks to flip an entire game board that they'd been setting up behind my back for years. 3 weeks to erase every trace that the house had ever belonged to the good son, the one who always nodded, always sacrificed, always stepped aside. And to do that, I needed just 2 things: time and complete silence. I picked up the phone and called my mom using the rushed, breathless tone of someone doing everything for others. "Mom, the deep cleaning crew says that in order to treat the mold, repaint, and meet all the child safety regulations, the house has to be completely sealed for at least 3 weeks. No visitors, no foot traffic, nothing that could disrupt the air filtration, paint curing, or insurance requirements. It's a lot." There was a pause on the other end, then a long sigh. 3 weeks? But Kyle and Rachel were planning to move in at the start of next month. "I know," I said quickly. "I made sure they understand the timeline. I'm pushing to meet that deadline. I promise, by the 1st, everything will be like new." My mother softened, clearly convinced. "You really are the treasure of this family, Ethan." I hung up and exhaled. The plan was in motion. On day 1, I began removing every personal item from the house, not because I was afraid they'd find them, but because I wanted to leave that place as if I'd never belonged there in the first place. I sorted everything into 3 categories. Group 1, keep, just a few essentials: my laptop, some clothes, a few technical books, and 1 old photo of me and Alyssa under a tree in an Idaho park. Nothing fancy, just enough to start over. Group 2, donate or sell: the sofa I bought with my first 5 months' salary, the walnut desk I assembled myself, all of it gone, off to strangers who had no reason to disrespect them. Group 3, trash: old mail, hollow birthday postcards from Mom, childhood photos where Kyle stood front and center and I hovered at the edge of the frame, all tossed into black bags and tied tight. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Emma, the real estate agent, moved like someone who'd handled hundreds of quiet escapes. "We've got 2 potential buyers," she told me, "a young couple expecting their first child, and an investor offering full cash." "I want to meet the couple," I said. "I want to sell to someone who deserves it." The meeting was set for Wednesday. Meanwhile, I kept texting Rachel, still playing the role. "Hey, Rachel, have you settled on a paint color yet? The painters are prepping for primer next week. Glossy wood floors or matte." She sent me swatches, lamp options, even teddy bear wallpaper samples for the baby's room, completely unaware. Meanwhile, I was signing the paperwork to sell the house to Sam and Mariah. 3 weeks. They thought I was renovating the home for them. In reality, I was dismantling it, brick by brick, from a world they never imagined I'd walk away from. And when I placed my hand on the wall one last time, I whispered in my mind, "This house isn't a home anymore. It's evidence. Evidence that I once existed, and that I finally learned how to walk away." I never planned on going back to my parents' house, but HR in Denver needed my last 3 years of tax documents to finalize my relocation package. I remembered storing them in a filing cabinet, the one still sitting in my dad's old office, the room he proudly called the fortress of traditional thinking. I texted my mom, politely pretending I was still playing along. "Hi, Mom, I need to grab some old tax files. Would it be okay if I stopped by Saturday afternoon for a quick visit?" She responded in the exact tone of someone who thinks I've done my noble duty and should now keep my distance. "Let yourself in. The cabinet's in your father's office. I'm taking Rachel to buy a baby rocker." I arrived at 5 p.m. The house was silent. The spare key was still hidden under the stone by the porch, a spot I'd been trusted with for years. Dad's office was unchanged. The heavy scent of mahogany, the cracked leather chair, and that oil painting of a ship caught in a storm. An unsubtle metaphor for how he saw himself. The anchor in chaos. I knelt down, pulled the old file box from under the desk. As I lifted it, my sleeve brushed a stack of envelopes sitting on the corner. A few slipped and scattered across the floor. I bent to pick them up, ready to stack them back neatly, when one bright red letterhead caught my eye. Rapid Cash Recovery Inc., a company name that practically screamed, "not a bank." I paused, opened the envelope. Inside, a notice printed in bold, "Final demand for payment. Account, Kyle F. Blake principal balance, $38,000 with penalties and processing fees, nearly $61,000 total." And beneath that, in bold black letters, "Failure to remit payment by the 30th may result in legal action, property seizure, or physical enforcement measures as permitted by state law." I stood frozen in the stillness of that office. They weren't just planning to let Kyle live in my house. They were planning to use my house to cover his debt. This wasn't helping family or supporting your brother. This was forced sacrifice, dressed up in the language of love and loyalty. I slipped the letter back into the envelope, stacked the papers as if I'd never touched them. But in my head, everything had shifted. The entire game had just changed. Driving home, I glanced at the rearview mirror, not because I thought I was being followed, but because for the first time, I truly believed they might be dangerous. They were ready to throw me to the wolves to save Kyle. They didn't care what it would cost me. They didn't care if I survived it. As long as Kyle was saved, as long as the storm didn't touch them. I pressed the gas pedal. In my hands were tax documents, but in my chest, something far more powerful: clarity. 2 days after discovering the debt letter, I met up with Emma, the most discreet realtor in all of Portland, at a quiet cafe near downtown. She opened her laptop on the table without a single wasted word. On the screen were the profiles of 2 potential buyers. One, an investor who specialized in flipping low-value properties for rentals. The other, a young couple, Sam and Mariah, expecting their first child in September. Emma tilted her head and asked, "Do you want the higher price or peace of mind?" I didn't hesitate. "I want to sell to someone who will appreciate what my family never could." We scheduled a house showing for Friday. Sam was a systems engineer. Mariah taught elementary school. They had just lost out on their first home to a higher bidder, but the moment they stepped into mine, the place that had once been a battleground of manipulation and quiet erasure, their eyes lit up like kids on Christmas morning. Mariah ran her hand gently across the kitchen counter. "Did you pick this stone yourself? I love the beveled edges. So warm and homey." Sam pointed at the wall I had painted myself. "We're thinking of turning this spot into a reading nook for the baby." I stood in the living room watching them like I was witnessing a version of family I'd never had the chance to touch. And right then, I knew. They were the right ones. "If you two want this house," I said, "I'll leave all the appliances, washer, dishwasher, even the wall-mounted shelves, free of charge. But there's one condition." They paused. "I need a fast close, no delays, no reaching out to old contacts, no back and forth." Sam nodded immediately. "We've got the cash." Wedding savings. We can pay in full within 3 days. I turned to Emma. Draw up the contract. I'm choosing them. That same night, while Kyle was texting me asking whether tile or hardwood would look better in the living room, I was sitting at my desk, signing away the house. Page by page, I didn't feel an ounce of regret. Each signature wasn't just a legal formality, it was a declaration of independence. This wasn't running away. This was a strategic retreat, with a destination, a plan, and the perfect timing for a counterattack. 3 days later, I received confirmation from the attorney. The funds from Sam and Mariah had cleared. The new deed would be effective the following Friday, which just so happened to be the day before Kyle and Rachel were planning to roll in with a U-Haul to move in. As for me, I booked a one-way flight to Denver, non-refundable. Departure early Saturday morning. When I packed the last item, a framed photo of myself smiling, younger, softer, and far more breakable, I placed it gently into the box. Then, with a thick black marker, I wrote on the lid, "No one moved into this house, but I moved out of my old life." I left Portland at 6 a.m. on Saturday. The flight took a little over 2 hours, but I didn't feel a thing. No nerves, no tension, just a strange kind of quiet. The kind you feel when you finally pulled the knife out of your back, after years of silent stabs. When I landed in Denver and sat in my temporary apartment sipping coffee, my family was pulling up in front of the house they believed was theirs. I didn't need to be there to imagine it. I knew exactly how it would go down. The oversized U-Haul would be blocking the driveway. Kyle, slumped in the passenger seat, groggy and annoyed from waking up early. My father, Frank, would step out first, walking like a man about to hand over the kingdom. My mother would be in her usual light blue striped shirt, her so-called lucky shirt. And Rachel, cradling her baby bump, would have her phone out, ready to film the day we moved into our first family home. And then they'd see a stranger watering the front lawn. "Good morning," he'd say gently, without even pausing the hose. "I'm Tom Miller, and this is my home." Silence, the kind that ripples like a shockwave after an explosion. My dad would clear his throat, as if trying to untangle a small misunderstanding. "I think you're mistaken. This house belongs to my son, Ethan Blake. We're here to move in." Tom would set the hose down, wipe his hands on the towel hanging from his belt, and reply calmly, "I understand, but my wife, Mariah, and I bought this house from Ethan Blake. We moved in yesterday." Rachel would step forward, pale as a ghost. "No, this can't be. This is our house. I sent Ethan our color palette, the baby's room, the nursery wallpaper, the coastal calm floors." Tom would frown slightly, polite but firm. "I'm not sure what coastal calm is, but I know legal paperwork. And the signed deed is inside, if you'd like to review it." My mother would stumble forward, trembling, phone in hand. "I'm calling Ethan. This is some kind of sick joke. He's probably hiding around the corner." She'd dial. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Rachel would whisper, almost voiceless, "No, this can't be happening." And Kyle, who had been silent until now, would suddenly whip toward my father. "You said he agreed. You said Ethan was weak, that he wouldn't fight back. You promised me, Dad. You promised." Frank's fists would clench. His face would flush red, but no words would come out. Mariah, Tom's wife, would step out then, holding their baby. She'd look at my entire family standing awkwardly on her lawn, confused and stiff. "Tom, what's going on?" And Tom would answer simply, "These people think this is still their house." Mariah would nod slowly, clutch the baby tighter, and say, "If they're not gone in 5 minutes, I'm calling the police." And me? At that exact moment, I was quietly hanging my coat on the rack inside my Denver apartment. No applause, no fireworks, just peace. A feeling I'd never truly tasted in over 30 years. Somewhere far away, a family was falling apart, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't buried under the rubble. That night, I sat alone in my small Denver apartment, soft yellow light casting a warm glow on the last unopened moving box. On the table was an old phone, one I kept for a single purpose, to receive one final message if anyone dared to send it. I had powered it off for 3 days. Until that moment, I turned it on. Instantly, the screen lit up in a flood of notifications. 37 missed calls, 12 text messages. Most were from Mom, Kyle, Rachel, and my father. I didn't open a single one. I didn't need to. I already knew exactly what they'd say, and more importantly, why they were saying it. Only one name made me pause: Aunt Ellie, my mom's youngest sister, the only one in the family who ever gave me a birthday card with cash instead of a moral lecture. She didn't call often, and she didn't say much, but the voice message she left made me sit up straight and turn the volume all the way up. "Ethan, I don't know if you'll hear this, but I need to say it. Your mom called me this morning, crying, screaming, almost hysterical. I went over right away. And, oh God, Ethan, I made your father tell me everything." I held my breath. Kyle doesn't just owe Rapid Cash. That's just the tip of it. It started with crypto investments last year. He lost everything. Then came gambling, sports betting. By the time your father found out, it was already a disaster. Kyle convinced your dad to co-sign a loan with a private financial group, not a bank. A backdoor lender, practically loan sharks. I stood up, palms cold and sweating. It got worse, Ethan. When that money vanished too, Kyle forged your father's signature to remortgage their house. They're about to lose everything. They didn't tell you, because they planned to use your house to cover it all. A fast sale, cash, quiet, just enough to shake off the collectors. I'm sorry. I didn't know it had gone this far. But you deserve the truth. They didn't just want your house. They were ready to sell it, in your name, just to save themselves. Even if it meant you'd be sued, investigated, dragged into legal hell. Ethan, they were willing to sacrifice you. I collapsed into the chair, not angry, not even shocked. Just like someone who had finally stepped far enough back to see the whole picture. I wasn't just the son who got sacrificed for the family. I was the last life raft, and they were ready to set me on fire if it kept them afloat. I sent Aunt Ellie one short message. "Thank you. You're the only one who ever treated me like a person. Please take care of yourself. I'm okay. I'm free." Then I deleted all the other messages, blocked every number. I stood up, walked over to the window. The Denver night was cold and still, a city I didn't know, but one that didn't scare me, because for the first time, I was in a place where no one expected me to carry the consequences of someone else's bad choices. I wasn't a bank. I wasn't insurance. I was Ethan Blake. And I had cut the cord. I moved to Denver on a cold but perfectly clear morning. My apartment was on the 5th floor of a quiet building with a small balcony overlooking a tree-lined park. Not fancy, not huge, but it was enough. Enough for me to feel safe. No voice calling Ethan down the hall. No Kyle yelling at a bank rep. No more family dinners that were really just emergency meetings in disguise. Just me and the soft clicking of the coffee maker in my kitchen. I was set to start work at the Denver office the following Monday. Here, I wasn't Ethan, the obedient son. I was Ethan, lead product developer chosen for my skills, not my family connections. The first coworkers I met didn't ask if I had a wife or why I wasn't living near my parents. They asked what I felt like eating for lunch. They invited me bowling that weekend. They laughed when I told them I once painted an entire ceiling navy blue by accident, and they really laughed. Not the polite, let's move on kind. I started to live, not to prove anything, not to take someone's place, not as a shield for other people's mistakes. I learned to take evening walks just to hear the wind. I read books because I wanted to, not to drown out loneliness. I cooked, not because I had to save money to bail someone out, but because I enjoyed making something for myself. A month after settling in, I got an email from Corporate Strategy. They wanted me to lead a new market expansion in the Midwest. Why? Ethan, we need someone who understands systems, someone who knows how to start from zero and make something work. I read that line and laughed. They didn't know I'd been doing that my whole life, just never for myself. But now, I was. On weekends, I began a new ritual, sitting on my balcony with a cup of hot tea and a soft jazz playlist. No phone calls, no loan requests, no one telling me, you're the one who sacrifices for the family. There was only one voice left in my head, mine, and it told me, we don't owe anyone our suffering, and no one has the right to turn our kindness into a weapon. I lost a family to find myself, and that was a price worth paying.